You used to accept as true that love became something you needed to earn. That in case you just proved yourself sufficient, confirmed to her how much you cared, and by no means gave up, she'd in the end see your worth. You texted first, planned each date, and clung to each phrase she stated, terrified that if you slipped up even once, she'd walk away. However much extra you attempted, the extra she pulled returned. The more you needed her, the less she appeared to want you. It did not make sense. Why did the guys who slightly regarded care grow to be with the girls you chased? Then you definitely observed something. The men who attracted ladies' affections weren't playing video games. They simply failed to act like they were afraid to lose. They weren't mean or bloodless. They had been strong, self-confident, like they knew they had to be excellent no matter what. They didn't beg for interest or overanalyze texts. They did not rearrange their lives for a female's approval. But women have been drawn to them, not due to the fact they had been perfect, however due to the fact they weren't desperate. It's while it hits you. Neediness is invisible to the attention, however deafening to the instincts. Ladies do not determine attraction logically. They sense it. And what they experience when a person is simply too invested, too demanding, or too eager to thrill is the weight of his insecurity. It's not approximately being a pleasant man or a bad boy. It's about the energy you bring. The second you place her on a pedestal, she looks down on you.
The instant you act like she's a prize, you are marking yourself the runner-up.
However, here's the shift. While you prevent desiring her validation, when you virtually agree that you're the only one who decides your real worth, the whole lot changes. She starts off evolved to marvel why you are now not just like the others. She starts off evolved, chasing the self-belief you radiate, because the toughest truth is that this. You cannot make her want you, but you can make yourself impossible to disregard. You used to assume self-belief became about saying the right things or appearing like nothing afflicted you. You would rehearse conversations in your head, hype yourself up earlier than dates, and force yourself to be alpha. But it never felt real, as it wasn't.
Women schuld sense the act a mile away.
Then you definitely observed the truth. Real confidence isn't always something you fake.
It is something you forestall faking.
The shift came about whilst you stopped demanding approximately whether or not she liked you and began asking in case you even favored her. You stopped molding yourself into what you thought she wanted and just existed. No overall performance, no overthinking, just you fully present, completely unbothered by the final results. And that is when you noticed it. The way her posture changed whilst she talked to you. The manner her voice softened. The way she lingered a touch longer than necessary. She wasn't reacting to a few scripts. She became reactive to the quiet fact that you did not want her approval to feel whole. This wasn't about arrogance or pretending to be emotionless. It becomes approximately ownership. Proudly owning your flaws, your humor, and your evaluations without apology. If she disagreed, you did not go into reverse. If she tested you, you failed to scramble to show yourself. You held your floor now not because you had been cussed, however, because you relied on your personal judgment more than her fleeting reactions. And that unshakable middle, that is what drew her in. Ladies, do not fall for men who chase their affection. They fall for men who are too busy living to note who's chasing them. Whilst you stopped looking for validation, you have become the source of it as a substitute. And once you realized that, you understood why the guys who cared least constantly received. They were not seeking to win. They already had. The moment you stopped clinging was the instant the whole thing modified. You used to think patience became the key. In case you simply showed her sufficient attention and enough devotion, she'd ought to pick you. However, love doesn't look like a vending system in which you insert an attempt and receive affection. The tighter you gripped, the more she slipped away. Then sooner or later, you let go. Now, not out of spite, however out of self-admiration. And that is whilst she leaned in. You stopped responding to every text within seconds. You stopped rearranging your agenda. Simply to see her. You stopped feeding into the drama, the thought games, and the recent and cold conduct. Rather, you matched her electricity, now not as punishment however, as precept. If she pulled away, you gave her space. If she came closer, you welcomed her without desperation. There was no anger, no manipulation, only a quiet knowledge that you refused to be the handiest one attempting. And something abnormal happened. The less you chased, the more she questioned why. This wasn't indifference. It becomes detachment with aim. You were not ignoring her to play games. You were clearly refusing to lose yourself within the pursuit of someone who wasn't meeting you halfway. And while she realized you weren't orbiting her internationally, she started moving into yours. The texts got longer. The plans became her idea. The effort shifted because deep down humans don't value what comes too easily without problems. They price what they should reach for. The lesson wasn't approximately making her need you. It turned into about knowing you never needed her to. And that's the irony. When you, in the end, stopped begging for a seat at her table, she started out requesting an area at yours. You, in the end, reached the breaking point. The instant her indifference stopped hurting and started pissing you off, now not at her, but at yourself. Why were you combating so hard for someone who couldn't even meet you halfway? It truly is, while you made the decision that changed the entirety. You walked away, no longer as a tactic, not to manipulate her into chasing you, but because you ultimately valued your own peace more than her capacity. At the start, it felt like losing. You questioned if you'd made a mistake, if you needed to have simply swallowed your pleasure and stopped trying. However, then something sudden befell. The arena failed to end. In truth, it got lighter. Your thoughts cleared. The anxiety of awaiting her to select you vanished, changed by a quiet self-assurance you hadn't felt in years. And that's when she reappeared. No longer because you would perform a few sports perfectly, however, due to the fact your absence forced her to confront the fact. You have in no way been the choice. You had been the prize. This wasn't approximately ego. It becomes about knowing that love should not feel like a negotiation. While you walked away, you weren't giving up. You have been making room for something higher. And whether she got here back or not has become beside the point due to the fact you'd already reclaimed the one aspect you had misplaced yourself. The irony. That is precisely what made you impossible to resist. Now not the grand gestures or the determined pleas, however, the unshakable certainty that you'd rather be alone than accept crumbs. And that's the secret they by no means let you know. A person who knows his real worth should not show it. He simply lives it. And in doing so, he teaches people exactly the way to deal with him or gets rid of individuals who won't examine. You awaken one morning and recognize something odd. You don't understand the person you used to be. The fellow who agonized over texts, who twisted himself into knots to maintain her attention, who measured his worth via her affection. That man's long gone. In his region stands someone distinctive. Someone who would not chase, does not beg, and would not need to be needed. And here's the lovely element.
Girls observe.
They may be attracted to you presently in approaches that nearly sense unfair. No longer due to the fact you have turned out to be some ideal pickup artist, however, because you've stopped performing altogether.
Your Konversationsgliede wehtut Pressure.
Your presence carries weight without effort. Dates experience adventures instead of auditions. Why? Because you are no longer trying to extract price from these interactions. You are bringing it. Your life is already complete. Your cause burns too bright to dim for all of our approval. This magnetism isn't always some trick you learned. It is what emerges whilst you stop pretending to be a person of worth and absolutely come to be him. The ladies who count apprehend it right now. They see the person who is cozy in silence, who isn't always rattled by way of their checks, who smiles after they play hard to get due to the fact they are aware of the truth. The harder something is to seize, the more valuable it seems, and you have emerged as uncatchable by means of layout. The anomaly humors you now, all the years spent chasing love when what you clearly needed was to outgrow the need for it. Not in a cynical manner, however, inside the manor, a tree outgrows its need for the gardener's consistent care. You are rooted now, and whether the right lady comes to rest in your shade or not turns into a beside-the-point factor. You'll preserve developing regardless. It's the very last lesson. Love finds you while you stop searching it out to complete you and begin understanding you had been in no way incomplete to start with.